Cliffhangers are when a story ends in suspense, leaving you hungry for more. In fiction, this happens a lot. Cliffhangers can keep you guessing between episodes, seasons, series, or even entire movies. This happens in real life too. Like, how many times would you sit with a parent or loved one listening to a story, only to have them stop right before they got to the good part? It's infuriating.
Finish the fucking story, man. What happened?
There's a reason why. We have a psychological need for resolution. The first known example of cliffhangers as a narrative tool was 1001 Arabian Nights. It centers around a king who marries virgins and kills them the day after their wedding. His latest victim, a woman named Scheherazade, finds a clever way to delay her death. Every night, she will tell him a story, and then start the next one. The king, so desperate to find out how that one ended, would keep her alive another night. And thus, the modern cliffhanger was born. Thousands of years later, it was industrialized. The Industrial Revolution brought about a lot of change, not just in work, but in leisure. People took pride in their free time, but didn't always want to sit down and read a whole book that's so boring. This led to a surge in serialized storytelling. Newspapers, magazines, pamphlets, pieces of stories that could be read quickly on your own time. Most of these have sadly been lost to history, but the amount of serials from this time period could number in the hundreds of millions. Writers like Charles Dickens and Wilkie Collins inspired rabid fandom. You know that water cooler talk every time Game of Thrones kills someone off? Back then, that was happening all the time. Fans would write letters begging for the lives of their favorite characters. There were reports of readers taking bets on storylines and character fates. And according to a New Yorker article, there was even a time one of Dickens' stories started a riot, as people clamored to be the first ones to find out if Little Nell survived. Spoiler, she didn't. Eventually, there were just too many stories. Thousands upon thousands of serials were in publication simultaneously. So the use of cliffhangers became not only popular, but kind of essential. Some Victorians scoffed, calling them addictive, which, yeah, they are, but hey, they also gave kids opium for headaches, so they're not ones to talk. I mean, you gotta make sure your stuff stands out, right? What better way than by leaving your characters dangling off the edge of a cliff? Like in Thomas Hardy's A Pair of Blue Eyes, published in the 1870s. One chapter ended with a man literally hanging off a cliff as his love interest ran to find help. Don't worry guys, he made it. Then he dumped her, and then she died. Most historians say this moment inspired the term cliffhanger. Others attribute it to 1914's weekly film serial The Perils of Pauline, which likewise has a hanging off a cliff moment, though it wasn't an end-of-episode cliffhanger. The Perils of Pauline was one of many films that continued the cliffhanger tradition, along with comics like 1910's Desperate Desmond, whose very first strip ended with its main character dangling off a clock. But it took a long time for them to make their way to television. For decades, American shows refused to do them. Sure, you could catch them on Australian soap operas or episodes of Doctor Who, but in the US, networks liked having the option to air episodes out of order. Having cliffhanger endings made that harder, so they usually wouldn't do them. And ending a season on a cliffhanger? Practically unthinkable, unless you were soap, then you could get away with it. But all of that changed in 1980 with one simple question.
Who shot JR on Dallas? I'll just bet Cliff Barnes did the dirty deed.
When the smoke's clear, dear, you'll find that it was Vaughn Leland.
CBS series Dallas shocked the world by ending its third season with one of the biggest cliffhangers in the history of, well, everything. For an entire summer, the country was obsessed. It made the cover of major newspapers, fans would overrun film sets trying to sneak a peek at whodunit, others were taking bets on the gunman's identity. Sound familiar? After that, cliffhangers between episodes or even seasons were not only possible, they were actively encouraged, and now they're everywhere. And why not? They're great! For the most part. Granted, there are some problems with cliffhangers. They can leave people feeling anxious and come across as dishonest when the resolution sucks. Plus, some films and shows try to use them as bait to keep themselves alive, like Scheherazade did. Remember Twin Peaks or The Last Airbender movie? Lucifer's showrunner flat out admitted that was their tactic before their show ended this year. For the most part, cliffhangers are harmless fun. They're a way to feel connected not only to the story, but to other fans. Much like serials in the Victorian era, we too suffer from an overabundance of choice. There's just so much good stuff to watch and read right now. That, along with an online culture where spoiling is surprisingly easy, means there needs to be extra effort made in order to stand out from the crowd. Cliffhangers are a great way to bring people back week after week, year after year, so long as they're earned.